swing and a drive. Right field and deep. Back goes Aquino. It's got a chance. Gone. Get out the tape measure. Long gone.
Fly the W!
Cubs fans, it's time to fly the W with Dustin Rhodes and Paul Crawley-Jean.
You are listening to the Fly the W podcast. We are part of the Blue Wire Network. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Leave those 5-star reviews, and you can email me over at crawleysclubhouse@gmail.com. We're going to continue our preview of the Cubs NL Central opponents, and I am happy to have on Gordon Wittenmyer, beat writer for the Cincinnati Enquirer and formerly your Chicago Cubs. How you doing, Gordo?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? It's always fun to come on this podcast, by the way.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping on. And I got to tell you, last season when I heard that the Reds got Tito Francona as a manager, you just know, like, there's certain guys that are just like, I'm like, I did not want to see Tito come into the Reds. What kind of difference did you notice last year having the new skipper?
Well, before that, they sucked, and then they made the playoffs. Well, how about that one?
That's
good. The Cubs could say the same thing the last time they changed managers.
Well,
they won
again,
games, and then they won 83 games.
That is true. That is true. And the thing about Francona is he just has like such a presence to him. I remember Cubs playing him in 2016. I remember when he was with Boston. I mean, with Cleveland, and now with Cincinnati. I mean, the guy just knows how to push all the right buttons. I think both like from the dugout, the X's and O's, but also the personality of all these players, especially young players.
That's absolutely the biggest thing. You saw it in Cleveland all those years. And one thing that became apparent, like, look, man, when you hear a guy say, we just need him to buy in. We just want to, there's going to be times when we got to figure stuff out as long as we're all figuring it out together. And you're like, yeah, whatever, dude, whatever. Come on. And it's all this happy talk about pulling in the same direction. And it's just about now. It's not about looking down the road at stuff. Well, what happened was he got those guys to buy into this notion of, look, we're just going to try to win today. And if we don't, then we're going to come back tomorrow. And then on that day, we're going to try to win. And then the next day. Well, okay, everybody tries to do that. And he had a way of being really consistent. The best managers are always consistent. Like the next day, you don't know if they've won or lost the day before. And he treats people really well. He treats people with respect. But by the end of the season, they needed every win. They got in on the last day, and they didn't even win the last day. Now, it took a Mets just incredible implosion. The Reds never should have made the playoffs if the Mets just are, not horrible. So there were certain circumstances, and there were probably, I counted 3 times in September when they were dead, when they suffered the kind of a loss or the kind of a series sweep like they did in Sacramento that just buried them. Like, They were this many games out. They had no chance. I wrote them off 3 times, and they made the playoffs. And that's because after those devastating, horrific losses that any normal human being would have said, we're done. They didn't say we're done. They just said, okay, well, we'll try to see if we can win tomorrow. And in fact, after, and not that we think we're going to make the playoffs, but we'll try to win tomorrow and then see what happens. He got them believing that matters. And lo and behold, it did. When they got done getting swept in Sacramento, I mean, that was ugly. That was just awful. And he told him after the game, hey, listen, guys, who knows? There's historic things have happened in this game. Who knows? Doesn't look good right now. Maybe we don't. Maybe it doesn't happen. But let's just suck it up and get on that bus and get out of here, and then start over tomorrow. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. Let's see if we can make history, because stranger things have happened. So, I mean, just, it's honest. It's not Pollyannic at that point. It's just like, hey, who knows? But he kept them playing.
And again, they made it to October, and that was a long time for the Reds since they were last in a postseason, in a regular season. I'm not talking about 2020. We all know 2020 didn't really count. But even though the Reds have a new manager, they always seem to have the Cubs number. They went 8-5 against the Cubs last season. And now this year, a notorious Cubs killer returns to the Reds. Eugenio Suarez. Gordon, I was there in Phoenix last year, opening day against the Diamondbacks, when Suarez absolutely just went nuts on the Cubs. He always seems to. How was his return received by the Reds faithful?
Well, if you know anything about this guy, you know he's everybody's favorite teammate. Anybody who's ever played with him loves him. You know, he's got that thing, what is it, good vibes only or something? He lives it, man. He's always clowning with guys. He gets to work. He does his job, but he's a fun guy to be around. For the writers too. He's just great people, and everybody loves him. When he got traded over to Seattle last year, they tell the story over there about how they held the plane. It's another Sacramento story. It so happened that the Diamondbacks were flying in to start a series in Sacramento as the Mariners were flying out. They held the plane in Sacramento, the Mariners, knowing that the Diamondbacks were on their way, and they were just going to make the exchange there. So they didn't tell the players, the Mariners players, why they were holding the plane. They just said, we got some stuff we got to take care of, and we'll be out of here soon. Once the Diamondbacks plane landed and they let Gino get off and get on the Mariners flight, once the players realized why they'd been waiting, they gave him an ovation. They all applauded him as he goes down, because he'd played there before. He goes down the aisle and he's giving fives and saying hi to all his old pals. They to this day, I talked to some of them earlier in camp, talked just off the charts about him. Same way the Reds talk about it. But I'll tell you this, you know, that's not the thing that makes this such a big deal. It's more what you said. And he not only has the Cubs number, but this guy hit 49 home runs once before for the Reds. He hit 49 home runs last year. He's going to the easiest park, I think, in baseball to hit home runs. And by my way of thinking, even more than Bregman, who was the sort of the biggest star acquired by anybody in the division, this guy was the biggest acquisition in the division because of the single biggest difference he has a chance to make because of who he is and which team he joined. That is the exact thing they needed. That power threat, veteran power threat, that even when he's slumping, you have to respect, that you can put right behind Ellie De La Cruz. That could make the difference of half a run or more a game for these guys, given what it might do for the rest of the lineup. Now it makes them an above average offensive team instead of below average.
Well, I'll tell you, Gordon, I saw a Cubs-Reds spring training game, and, you know, we don't put too much stock in spring training. It's just spring training, not a big deal. You know, the Reds pounded the Cubs 17-9. That's not the big story to me. What the big story to me was Matt McClain going 2 for 3, 6 RBIs, 2 walks. I said to myself, if this guy gets going again, look out, because if you can have a healthy McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, and now Suarez as, say, like a 2-3-4 or a 3-4-5, that is something that pitchers are not going to want to go through. Dude,
I don't know why you're having me on this podcast, because you're taking all my lines, because you know this team as well as I do by the sounds of it. Look, day one of spring training this year, Francona said the one thing that I want to sort out with the lineup is who's going to bat second. He stuck with McClain there probably too long last year, as McClain had a season-long slump. He likes Friedel as his leadoff guy. He likes it. He's a left-handed hitter. He likes him even against lefties, except in some rare cases. So that's going to be pretty much your everyday leadoff guy. Ellie De La Cruz is third. Suarez is fourth, and maybe Sal Stewart, this rookie with the big bat, maybe he's fifth, but they got other options. Two, if it was like, well, if McLean can do it, if McLean's back at some point, maybe he gets back to that spot. But all he's done is hit this spring, and it's not just spring training hitting. He looks good. The ball's coming off his bat in the way we saw when he broke a couple of years ago, before he had that shoulder injury that kept him out all of 24. They think they found some mechanical things that he was doing probably as a result of that shoulder injury when he came back last year that they fixed so that his mechanics are more like they were in 23. And it's showing. He's this dynamic bat now that he was when we first saw him break in. Can it hold up? I got no idea. He's got a lot to show yet. But give you an idea, as we tape this on Sunday morning, we're in talking to Tito, and somebody asked him, is there anything more you need to see out of Matt McLean this spring? And he says, well, if he wants to hit 600 instead of 500, sure, we'll take that. And McLean got 2 hits in his first 2 at bats in that game, including a home run. So so he did that too. He's going to be the number 2 hitter, and if that works, yes, you've got a much different looking lineup than you had last year in Cincinnati. And all of a sudden, 1 through 5 is spoken for in what they think is a pretty positive everyday way. You can do whatever you want with the rest of it. And they got some decent pieces down there. They got an offensive-minded catcher and Tyler Stevenson. When he's healthy, he can look really good. You know, Spencer Steer is probably a guy that people don't really think about. I think he could be due for a pretty good, if maybe close to a breakout year. He's been a league average hitter pretty much. He could do a little more than that, especially if he's not expected to or required to. A little down in the order when pitcher wants to take a breath and all of a sudden he gets a cookie to hit. So it could be, the way it looks now, a much different offensive team than we saw last year. All that said is, you know, the next thing you say is this isn't a team with a lot of depth. And you know, being a small market team, those teams usually aren't. So they got to stay healthy.
Yeah, and Key Brian Hayes in that rare interdivision trade last year, he's always hit the Cubs well too, even though, you know, defensively is what you think about. But, you know, when we talk about spring training, the one thing you always say is, let's just get everybody healthy. And I feel if there's one thing that has really held the Reds back the last few years, it's been injuries and to the pitching staff as well. Losing Hunter Green until, what are they saying, July, that has to come as a tremendous blow though.
It does. Now, it also comes with a bit of a caveat. They've done this before. Literally every year of his career, he's missed extended time. Last year, they made the playoffs with a grade 1 groin injury that was expected just to keep him out maybe 3 weeks, and it did the first go-around. Came back, made a couple starts, said it wasn't quite right. They couldn't find a lot on the MRIs, but they knew that this strain had been there, so he wasn't right. He wound up in rehab for a long time. He missed, by the end of the season, he'd missed almost half the season. It was like close to another 2 months the second time around with that injury. And they still made the playoffs. They had Chase Burns come up, the guy that was drafted number 2 overall a year before, and he showed that 100-mile-an-hour fastball, that wicked slider that he's got. He was striking out 10 guys a game, 4 out of 5 starts, and not really going deep into games either, partly because he's striking out so many guys, pitch counts up there. He's a guy that's in the mix for one of those rotation spots. Brett Lauder's a guy that missed all last year. He was his number 7 overall pick in 2023, made his debut in 2024, pitched 6 starts and had a 1.17 ERA. Missed last year with a couple of injuries. The big one, the long-term one, was an oblique that he just frickin' blew when he was rehabbing. He's back looking every bit as he's a command guy that's got some stuff, and he's just been dotting this spring. They got him, and then they got a guy back from Tommy John, Brandon Williamson, who in 2023 was a rookie, broke in May, and by the end of the year was their best starter. So, and he's looked pretty good this spring. So they've got some depth there. One of the stories of the offseason was, would they trade from some of that depth? and they didn't. So with Hunter Green, you could stack that rotation up on paper with almost anybody in the game, 5 or even 6 deep. Without Hunter Green, you go back to plan B, which they've been successful at in recent years. And you got this Chase Burns kid who profiles as a similar velocity power pitcher with the secondary pitch, that if he takes another step forward this year. Now, all this comes with a caveat that these guys at the back end are still really young, so they could go either way. But you do have some options, and their bullpen's a little stronger this year. So what people don't realize is that if you go to Fangraphs and you call up starting rotations last year, and you look at the WAR, Reds were number 2, and I don't think a lot of people would have guessed that. And so they were in position with a healthy Hunter Green to maybe challenge somebody to be the best.
I that's the thing is I remember Hunter Green now, granted, I think the Cubs clinched right before and partied crazy when they clinched a playoff spot, but then they had that game against Hunter Green where he threw that complete game one hitter. And I was just like, that was just such a dominant performance. I don't care how hungover everybody was. That was something. And so that's why I kind of was like, I picked the Reds actually to beat the Dodgers in the first round. I'm like, man, because those short series, if you could have gotten that kind of start from Hunter Green, put the Dodgers, a little bit on tilt.
Well, you're freaking nuts, because we had just been in LA and they had gotten swept there, and Hunter, that's where he's from. And he didn't look good there. He had a bunch of family. I don't know if that was part of it or not. He didn't look good in that start in LA about a month before the end of the season. And then, you go in and all of a sudden Blake Snell's healthy and dealing. That's the reason the Dodgers weren't a higher seed in the playoffs. They just had too much firepower. I didn't think that the Reds really had a chance to go in there, especially because I knew that their lineup just wasn't going to do enough against the Dodgers. Probably they had to keep it low scoring. Hunter Green really had to deal, and he didn't. And then that was the end of it. But they scored against that crappy Dodgers bullpen, but it was 8-1 by then or whatever it was.
Well, so far, what would you say is the most surprising thing you've seen coming out of Reds camp? Something that maybe Cub fans from far away don't realize, that you're saying to yourself, this is kind of an interesting development for this team.
Well, the Matt McClain. I think Matt McClain is probably the headline, just because coming out of last year, you couldn't know whether last year was closer to who the real Matt McClain was, or that, roughly 3-month debut in 23 when he was so impressive. You just didn't know. You couldn't say, well, what he was as a rookie, boy, that's what he needs to get back to. That's who he is. I don't know if that's true. You make adjustments, and some guys don't make adjustments. And so the fact that he does look like that, the fact that shoulder maybe did impact him, and that he does seem like he's got that same life in his bat again, and he's got that nice short swing. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Ellie De La Cruz is healthy again. He played with a quad strain much of the second half of the season. That's why you saw his numbers dip. It's probably why you saw a big power drought. I would expect Suarez last year hit more home runs than the top 2 Reds guys combined. I would expect, my bold prediction will be that 2 guys hit 30 home runs for the Reds this year. And they haven't had one guy do it since the last time Suarez played for him.
Well, I know you're not big into Pacoda. I'm going to throw it up there, though. Pacoda has the Reds at 78 and 83. Over or under on that?
Oh, it'll be over. I think it'll be over. And maybe they don't make the playoffs, but I think they'll have a winning record this year. I'd be really surprised if they don't. If they don't, it's going to be because the division is so good. It's going to be because the Brewers don't step back and the Pirates step way up. we know the Cubs are going to be good. They have a nice base, even without possibly Suzuki to open the season. Who knows what happens with his knee? Cubs will be good. I mean, the Pirates might be really good. Like, who knows, right? And so there might not be as many wins to get in the division, but I would say all else being equal, like Dakota don't know shit. They should have a winning record unless they have like multiple devastating injuries.
I will tell you, like I said, I agree with you. I think that the NL Central is going to be a dogfight. I don't think that there's just any series that you're going to sit there and say, oh yeah, that's an easy win. I think all of the series are going to be battles, and it could be very similar to last year where we see 3 teams from the NL Central back in the postseason again.
Maybe, except that, there were wins to get in the division that might not be there this year. And
that's true.
Maybe, but maybe you're right. Maybe look, the other thing that happened last year was Atlanta just fell off the face of the earth when they had like their entire rotation on the 60-day IL. They should be better. The Mets should be better. The Phillies should be the Phillies. The Dodgers will be the Dodgers. I don't think the Padres are necessarily going anywhere. It's going to be tough to get 3 teams out of the division, but I thought there was no chance of getting 2 last year, and they got 3. So who the hell knows? But it could be the best division top to bottom, and get 2 teams in.
I agree with you on that one. Gordon, I always appreciate talking Reds baseball with you, and tell our listeners where they can find your work on the socials and where they can listen to you at.
GWMLB on Twitter or X or whatever the hell they call that now. And Cincinnati.com, which is the Enquirer's website. That's the main place to go.
And you're still working with Cap, right?
Oh yeah, the Recap Cubs podcast. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to say that on your podcast.
We're all welcomed on each other's podcast. It's always good for Cub fans to listen to. I think if you listen to one podcast too much and just them, you don't get a full spectrum of what's out there, man. Give it a listen, because people have different ideas and we all aren't going to agree with each other, but I think there's a lot of respect among everybody. And I think that it's just a fun, passionate base. And Gordon, you were a big part of it, and always enjoy seeing you when you come around Wrigley.
Thanks, man. And to your point, me and Cap, we never agree. So
that's what makes it fun. Gordon, take care, and we'll see you at the Friendly Conference, my friend.
All right. You too, man. Take care.